coalition to stop anti-Asian violence and to stop China bashing. We are here because of the terrorist attack on Asian people that is happening all over the country that was sparked in Atlanta. We are here to protest against the cultural hegemony that the ruling class has put over us in order to incite these violences. The anti-China, anti-Asian American is not something that is not known to the United States. This is something that we have constantly done. And it's no wonder that there's terrorist attacks on Asian American individuals in the United States. We will have a few speakers and some chants to go along with our demonstration today. So let's start with a classic. The people united will never be defeated. 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 The people united will never be defeated.
The people
united will never be defeated. Hell yeah!
Hell yeah!
Stop attacks on Asian people! 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 Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people! Stop attacks on Asian people!
Oh my God!
Stop attacks on Asian people! Stop attacks on Asian people! Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people!
Stop attacks on Asian people! Stop attacks on Asian people!
Down with the U.S. war machine from China, Korea to the Philippines. Down with the U.S. war machine from China to Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine!
From China to Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine!
From China to Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine!
From China to Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine!
From China to Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine!
From China to Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine!
From China to Korea to the Philippines. Hell yeah!
Hell yeah!
All right, y'all. We're going to have our first speaker. It's going to be Mustafa. Here you go. Hey guys, I'm Mustafa. I am both a member of the Answer Coalition and of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. So I'm going to be talking from the perspective of a colonized individual. I was born in New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand, but I reigned from Iraq. I'm of Iraqi heritage, both Iraqi and Turkish. When you get to know your native language, and when it's the very first language you speak, as you begin to learn English, the language that has the largest hegemony on global culture and the one that is known as the universal language, when you try to code switch and you switch between your native language and that of English, you begin to have this sort of bitter taste. There's a bitter taste to the English language. You can't express yourself in the same way. And it feels like that's intentional for us colonized folks to not be able to speak with our own tongue as often or as comfortably as we'd like, without being alienated, extradited, or ostracized from our own society and our peers. Another interesting thing, and this is one of those, weird shower thoughts. But why don't we call countries by the names of their native language? In my case, I would reign from what most of us would here call the Middle East. But the Middle East, believe it or not, was actually a term given to it by UK, by the British, during the British rule of Iraq and other regions in the Middle East. The actual, more precise name of the Middle East is West Asia. Middle East is such a strange, alienated name because it doesn't belong to anyone, or it's not really an actual place. It, in a way, serves the goal of what a lot of these things serve, is alienating us from our humanity, from that which unites us, along with things like our class, our race, and our gender. And speaking from someone who comes from that region, comes from West Asia, I want to kind of talk about the history and the relationship between East and West Asia, the solidarity that we've shared throughout history. As of right now, China has done more historically for Iraq and for the whole of West Asia to aid and support my country in the region than the U.S. has ever done in its entire existence. The United States is almost entirely responsible for the crumbling infrastructure of my nation, with the implanting of Saddam Hussein, with the subsequent assassination of his person, followed by increased military aggression. That's not even to mention the fact that the terrorist groups that we all are all terrified of and talk about in the news constantly, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, and Taliban, that are putatively grown out of jihadist or fundamentalist Islam, are actually those who've been radicalized, trained, and armed by the U.S. military and the CIA. One of the biggest campaigns that's been going on right now to spur a lot of the notoriety and antagonism against China is the Xinjiang Uyghur propaganda campaign that we've been seeing. Although there's a substantial lack of evidence for the accusations being pinned against China, and a very substantial amount of evidence against those claims. One of the biggest ones, and I'm speaking from the region that I reign from, 54 countries that are predominantly Muslim majority countries have signed the charter in support of China's approach of re-education in their trade school regimens. Instead of using a military approach to squandering and squashing their opposition, they decided to educate them and give them jobs instead. And they have the support of the actual people that are claimed or accused of being the victims. The only people against the charter are people in the West, the United States, and others of the EU. And just to quote someone, in terms of the actual existence of mosques in Xinjiang. This is from one of the Chinese ambassadors, Mr. Wang. If we look at the numbers, there are more than 24,000 mosques in Xinjiang, which is over 10 times more than the United States. And it means that for every mosque, there's 530 Muslims in Xinjiang, which is more mosques per capita than any Muslim country. A lot of xenophobia, believe it or not, is rooted in anti-communism. Communism as an idea, as an ideology, has been conflated with a Chinese persona, or an Asian persona at that. And this has especially been intensified by the McCarthyist Red Scare, but it even preceded it. A lot of people talk about support for the Chinese people, but not the government, of course, acting as if they're speaking in good faith. The reality is that they're not at all authentic. Their statements are clear attempts to obscure their own xenophobia, when simple Google search can show how much support the Chinese government has from its own people. Damning the government is a condemnation of the people. Circling back to China's current support of West Asia, one of the only nations helping out Jordan and a lot of the Middle East, including Iraq, with vaccinations, which, for those who have been seeing, the distribution of vaccines have kind of been snuffed by the most recent vote in the UN by the United States, where a majority of countries in the West Asia and Africa are not going to be able to get vaccines for years as a result of the United States trade agreement. China is the only one who's actually going to be distributing their vaccine as a public good, meaning without charge, without selling it for some sort of profit. Ultimately, it's ridiculous that we even need to stand here to speak of any nation or people's contributions to society, to really need to assign them some sort of value or principle to what are the lives are valued of people who are human beings. No one should need to argue or debate their value as a human being. I deeply believe that there's no such thing as hatred for others. Any hatred that is experienced is a hatred of ourselves. When one says they hate X or they hate Y, they're only projecting their hatred for some part of themselves and assigning it to others so that they may continue to hate themselves without having to confront the source of that darkness. I say this to remind ourselves that we should never take to heart the hate that we see, hear, or feel from others. They are suffering from what will only be their demise. I often think about the many epithets that we have been granted to name our new generations. Millennials, Zillennials, Gen Z, Zoomers, Doomers. When I believe the name we deserve, the name that we carry as our crown of thorns, is that of chain breakers. We carry the clips to break the chains that we've been enslaved by, tied down to, and fight tooth and nail to rid ourselves and our communities of each one. And with one last thing. Before ideas, before politics, before all the walls and divisions that obscure our relationship to each other, we need to remind ourselves that we're all of the same kin. We're all humans, brothers and sisters and family. There's no worth in squandering your own time on this earth fighting in the name of hate. For all there is and is worth fighting for is love. Radical, unconditional love. We owe ourselves at least that much.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. Let's keep it going. What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it, shut it down! What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it,
Burn it all down!
what do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
And if we don't get it,
Burn it all down!
what do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it,
Burn it all down!
what do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
And if we don't get it,
Burn it all down!
thank you so much. One more, and then we go to the next speaker. Let me see. Congress says more war, we say no more. Congress says more war,
We say no more!
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 Congress says more war,
We say no
Like many of you, I was horrified by the first news of a mass shooting in Atlanta. And no doubt, like many of you, when I heard that the attacks were perpetrated by a quote-unquote sex-addicted white man on massage parlors, I immediately knew that this was yet another hate crime against Asian Americans, more specifically against Asian American women. Despite the reluctance by police and government officials to label this attack as such, it is undeniable that this violence is a reflection of the West's cultural attitudes toward Asian women. Again, presumably like many of you, from a young age before I ever formally learned about terms like Orientalism and fetishization, I sensed the intertwined racism and misogyny with which West considers East. It is time we reckon with the fact that race and gender are inseparable concepts, and that the West has a long history of racializing gender and gendering race. In the case of West versus East, this manifests as the concept of a hyper-feminine Orient. The Asian man is seen as emasculate and conniving in the vein of the insidious Dr. Fu Manchu. And as for the Asian woman, the Western eye grips her in a perpetual male gaze. Where is this more visible than in the bloody, needless wars the United States has waged in Asia? Coincidence or not, the Atlanta shooting happened on the anniversary of the My Lai massacre, which was an exceptional case not for the atrocities committed, but for being one of the few instances where the indiscriminate rape and murder perpetrated on a daily basis by the US military in Vietnam was brought to light. I would like to remind you that of the 26 tried, only one was convicted. The others exonerated simply for following orders, according to an unspoken mere gook rule, where soldiers were instructed to consider any and all Vietnamese as insurgents. In My Lai, this ended with 504 civilians dumped in mass graves. The racist war machine did not stop there. The Thuy Bo incident, 145 dead, predominantly women, children, and elderly. Operation Speedy Express, between 5,000 and 7,000 reported civilian deaths. Operation Wheeler, where the infamous Tiger Force killed hundreds of civilians with zero oversight and zero consequences. The Hue Massacre, between 2,800 and 6,000 civilians and POWs estimated dead. Between 5 and 10% of Hue's population at the time. US war crimes were not limited to Vietnam. In Korea, my parents' homeland, the Nogul-lee massacre, where 300 refugees were ordered to slaughter by the leadership of the 7th Cavalry Regiment, in which after a reinvestigation by the US in 2001, was merely called by the US Army an unfortunate tragedy inherent to war and not a deliberate killing. Beyond the indiscriminate rape and murder, we must consider the hundreds left orphaned with no choice but to congregate around the red light districts which follow US bases, or to take a chance with a human trafficker to end up in the various spas and massage parlors around the US. Do we not all carry in the backs of our minds school day taunts of "me love you long time"? Are we all not horrified at Facebook pages like "Libertarian Guys with Asian Wives," which blatantly fetishize Asian women as submissive, exotic, hypersexual objects who exist to be conquered in bed? And do we not all know somewhere deep within our hearts that the vast majority of Asian massage parlors in the US exist as a socially acceptable front for sex trafficking? What is the justification on the part of the West for Asian hate? Of course, it is a conception of us as the yellow peril, the Asiatic hordes, the communist threat. To my Asian American brethren here today, I say we must own these labels, because the label of model minority only goes surface level. If our massacre can be justified by the US as the fight against whatever, I say do not play their game. The game where profits and billionaires matter more than the lives of the people. I am going to flip not just the board, but the whole damn table, because the lives, our lives, will not be valued by America until the day where capitalism and white supremacy are wholly eradicated.
Thank you, Comrade Allen. And just to kind of touch on one of the notes that Allen brings up, I think you could literally define being colonized as orphanhood. Because we're orphans of our homelands. We are alienated from our own land. From our motherland, from our fatherland, left as children, lost to the diaspora, and to the whims of that diaspora, where we come to America with the dream of success and riches, only to be made the slaves, only to be made into Atlas himself, having to bear the world on our shoulders, while the rest of the white man continues to walk on the earth that we hold up for them. It's time that system, it's time that we take the world off of Atlas's shoulders and put it back on theirs. So let's kind of hype ourselves back up a little bit. Hey, 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 ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hey, ho, ho, Asian hatred's got to go. Hell yeah! Hey, hey, ho, ho, misogyny has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, misogyny has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, misogyny has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, misogyny has got to go. 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 Oh yeah! Hell yeah!
We would like to open up the mic for anybody who would like to speak. Just walk up to me, give a little hand raise, but we're going to keep going on chanting. If y'all come up with anything that y'all would like to say, just come on up. No justice!
No peace!
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 What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it,
We want it all now!
what do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
And if we don't get it,
Shut it down!
what do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
And if we don't get it,
Shut it down!
hell yeah! Hey, hey, ho, ho, racism has got to go.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
Racism has got to go.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
Racism has got to go.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
Racism has got to go.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
Racism has got to go.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
Racism has got to go.
Ho, ho!
Racism has got to go.
Hey, hey!
Racism has got to go. 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 Racism has got to go.
Racism has got to go.
Hell yeah. Again, if anybody wants to speak.
Black, brown, Asian, white.
Same struggle, same fight.
Black, brown, Asian, white.
Same struggle, same fight.
Black, brown, Asian, black.
Same fight.
Black, brown, Asian, white.
Same struggle, 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 same fight. And when we say same struggle, same fight, we are talking about white supremacy, patriarchy, racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia. We are all in this together.
Smash capitalism.
The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
The people
United will never be defeated.
The people
United will never be defeated.
The people
United will never be defeated.
The people
United will never be defeated.
The people
United will never be defeated.
The people
United will never be defeated.
The people
United will never be defeated.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Again, we have an open mic. Anybody can come up. I think she was. Thank you!
Could I say something short? Hi, my name is Maya. I won't be on the mic long. I just wanted to take a second. Look around you to these people that are by your side. All these people were always here. All of them. And they will be. That's what solidarity is. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo!
We're all here in solidarity. And we're all here because we're tired.
Yeah.
We are all so tired. We just want to be treated like people. Right? Thank you. Down with the U.S. war machine. From China, Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine.
From China, Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine.
From China, Korea to the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine.
From China, Korea, and the Philippines.
Down with the U.S. war machine.
From China, Korea to the Philippines. From China, Korea, and the Philippines. Man, it takes a lot of air to be up here. Double mast. All right. I'm going to open it up one last time if anybody would like to speak. Come on.
Hello everyone, my name is Victor, I'm from Mexico, and You know, the immigrants, that we all immigrants, Asian people, Mexican people, all over. And we all the time are struggling with hate. And we need to stop the hate now. We need to say to them, whoever hate us, whoever attack with hate, we need to continue to stand by and fight back. We all together are immigrants, and we will defend ourselves. That's why we feel as immigrants, and that's why I feel as an immigrant. We will fight together against hate, against hate and fascism. We need to be on the streets all the time, and this is how we demonstrating at this moment. And we're gonna continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, we are still open. One more chant, and then we have somebody in the lineup, but if you want to get in the lineup, just let me know. Okay.
Sorry.
I was ready. I was like, all right,
My bad.
let's go.
I'm giving myself a ticket.
Asian communities under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. Asian communities under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Asian communities under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Asian communities under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Asian community is under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Asian community is under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Hell yeah!
Hell yeah!
All right. Mason wants to come up on the mic. Here you go.
Hey everyone. It's been a hell of a year. It's been a really long year, and the people have spoken up. They've been speaking up for years and years. The people have demanded Medicare for all. And what did our government do, our fearless leaders? They pointed more guns at China. They built more bombs. The people demanded that the rents be canceled. And what did they do? They increased police budgets. We demanded an end to this pandemic, a proper shutdown, and they just increased the boot on the back of our necks. They tell us every day that our enemies are over in China, is the Communist Party of China. They tell us that they are evil, nefarious, and they must be stopped. I believe every day that my enemies are here in the United States, not in China.
Yeah!
The people I fight hardest against every day is here in the United States, in the halls of Congress, in the White House, in Wall Street.
The 1%!
The 1%! I stand, the same boot that is on our necks is stomping down on China. I feel solidarity with every person in China and with every person out here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mason. Yeah, it's been a hell of a year. And I feel like I keep saying that every protest, that we're tired of being here. I want to be off the streets. I want to live in a society where police aren't killing people, where we have access to vaccination, healthcare, where we have free rent. You know, socialism. And that's where we're going to end up. We're not going to stop fighting until we get what the people deserve. And we deserve to be taken care of. I mean, we've seen in Texas how Abbott has handled the situation where he put all of the onus on us when it came to stopping the spread. That's how the government works in the United States. They put the onus on the people when they're supposed to govern. They don't govern for themselves, they govern for the 1%. All right, we're gonna have a chant and then another speaker is coming up. Women are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Women are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Women are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up,
David.
Good afternoon. My name is David. I'm with the Houston United Front Against Fascism and Houston Socialist Movement. How you doing out there? Are you fired up about anti-Asian racism? You ready to fight back? Ready to end white supremacy? Misogyny? Class discrimination and exploitation? In a word, are you ready to end capitalism as a system? Because that's what it's going to take. So when we say black, white, Asian, white, black, brown, Asian, white, working people must unite, what's going to unite us? The struggle against white supremacy. What else is going to unite us? The struggle against misogyny, against all forms of bigotry. But I would submit to you, it's the politics of class that has the most potential to bring us together. Working people from all backgrounds have no interest in capitalism. It's time to smash the system, and it needs to be done as soon as possible. If you just think that's rhetoric, let me remind you, you had a January 6th attack on the national Capitol. It was never fated to succeed, but it tells you what fascists and their friends are capable of. You've got an ex-president out there now trying to whitewash the insurrection. You've got a guest on Tucker Carlson's show on Fox, both of them talking about how, yeah, maybe fascism will be necessary. My friends, it's time for us to fight together. So thanks again to Answer and PSL and everybody who came out today. This is the kind of struggle that we need to be in together. That's why we're here today to stand shoulder to shoulder with you, and that's what it'll take to smash the system. Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, one last call. Anybody want to speak? Because if not, we're going to have our wrap-up speaker. Going once. Going twice. Perfect. It always lights a fire to get people up.
Oh my gosh. Hello, my name is Joey. I'm a member of HUFAF, and I wanted to stand here. I'm here in solidarity with our Asian community and to stand up against the anti-Asian racism. So many thoughts going through my mind. One that keeps coming back to me is that we have more in common with our working class neighbors of color than we do with the pundits who might look like us but will lie to our faces and spread misinformation and lies about our neighbors and people overseas.
That's right.
They make us forget that at the end of the day we're all human and we need to, oh God, how do I say it? We got to push back against the lies. We've got to push back against the lies, and we have to fight. We have to fight against the apathy and the awkwardness and the pain of the past, and we have to come together in solidarity. And that doesn't just mean like warm fuzzies, right? Like we're out here holding signs, but we're also going to be here to support our neighbors, to support our communities and our families, and to help protect them when they come under harassment from bigots, when they come under persecution from the law and the state. We have to remember to speak up in every situation. I am so proud to stand here with all of y'all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. We're going to go ahead and close out with one last speaker. We're going to have Joy, who is with Answer Coalition, come speak.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Houston. Hello. My name's Joy. I'm here representing Answer Coalition, Texas. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Answer has been around since 2004, and we mean to act now to stop war and end racism. Today, I'm here to talk a little bit about history. When I was in school, history was my most hated subject. I did my best to circumvent these classes, or at least promptly forget the material after a class was over. I had absolutely zero interest in the American Revolution, the Civil War, or World War II, and even less in modern geopolitical relations. But I realized much later that the reason I had such an aversion to history was because all that I was being taught was white supremacist, revisionist history. The victor writes the history books, after all. That's why it's so important to unravel the web of lies we've been taught and learn our real history. History tethers us to reality because no single event happens spontaneously. There's always a cause. There's always an effect. Always ebbs, always flows. There's always a perpetrator. There's always a victim. If we don't examine history, we're only operating off tropes, stereotypes, sometimes even straight up lies. Today, I want to bring attention to the history of Black-Asian solidarity, because in the mainstream narrative, our communities are pitted against each other, shaped to have opposing interests, when in reality, our struggles come from the same roots: capitalism, imperialism, and white supremacy. Our predecessors in the movements before us for racial justice and liberation knew this, but a united working class is dangerous, so this history has been erased. The legacy of slavery continues to engulf Black people today through police brutality and the prison industrial complex, while Asian Americans have largely been elevated to model minority status. But this status is conditional. As we can see from the recent killings, it can be revoked at any time. Alright, my mask is bothering me. It's hard to talk with this on. Alright, most people have heard of Malcolm X. But do you know who held him and comforted him as he lay dying? It was Yuri Kochiyama, a Japanese-American woman who was radicalized by her family's internment in World War II. Not only was she a close comrade of Malcolm X, but she also supported and fought for Mumia Abul-Jamal, who is still in prison with COVID. She also fought for Assata Shakur, another Black Panther held as a political prisoner who escaped from prison in Cuba, and Marilyn Buck, who spent the rest of her own life in prison for helping Assata escape. Kochiyama still had a long political legacy even after that. She was also a member of the Young Lords Party, a revolutionary Puerto Rican organization, and spoke out against the Vietnam War, and warned of violence against racially profiled Arabs, Muslims, and South Asians following 9/11. Most radicals know of Fred Hampton, chairman of the Chicago Black Panthers, murdered by an FBI conspiracy at only 21 years old. He understood that liberation for his own people was linked to the liberation of all other oppressed groups because they have a common enemy. He was killed because his vision, a united proletariat, was too much of a threat to the status quo. Hampton was murdered not while he fed thousands of impoverished children or led reading groups or provided child care to single mothers. It was while he slept. And it was shortly after forming the Rainbow Coalition, an organization that brought the multinational working class together, including Puerto Ricans through the Young Lords, Asians through Uyghur Clan, Chicanos from the Brown Berets, Indigenous Americans from the American Indian Movement, and Black outcasts from the streets. Did you all know that there was a counterpart, an Asian counterpart to the Black Panthers? Why has that been erased from our history? Because it is the tried and true method of divide and conquer. This tactic has always worked well for the rich and powerful because they are united in their wealth and their power. While extracting natural resources from global South nations in Asia, these monsters can also export Western culture and import Eastern bodies for labor. We've gone from being used in the restaurant industry, for tech, for sex. We've always been used. That's why they don't want us to know our history. Martin Luther King Jr., often cited as having been assassinated for his role as a leader in the civil rights movement. This is historical revisionism. MLK was assassinated after speaking out against the Vietnam War. In times of civil unrest at home, the ruling class will point fingers abroad. We can see it now. MLK had to be stopped from awakening the masses to this. And I'm still not done. What about Grace Lee Boggs and her work with James Bogg and C.L.R. James, who wrote and organized about racial justice for 5 decades together? What about W.E.B. Du Bois, traveling to China in the 1960s to talk to Mao Zedong himself about racial justice and black relations? What about the countless instances of solidarity displayed between us, the masses, the normal people? Abolish the tropes of thugs and rooftop Koreans and know that there is a long, long history of solidarity that does not serve the interests of landlords, banks, bosses, and corporations. On March 17th, when news of the gruesome mass murders in Atlanta broke, it was not my closest friends, family, or comrades who contacted me first. It was an acquaintance, a black man I hadn't been very close with, but he still thought of me that day. He immediately understood the pain and the shock I experienced that day. He reached out with words not only of support, but love and unity. That is solidarity. Throughout the rest of that day, black members of my community wished me words of healing and strength. That is solidarity. That week, black shoppers stopped by Asian grocers and restaurants to show their support. That is solidarity. All non-white people, we are linked under a looming threat of white supremacist violence. And the entire working class, we are linked under a looming threat of increasingly, irreversibly destructive capitalism. So, what is to be done? These demonstrations, as necessary as they are, is not where the work stops. There is so much more work to be done. The only way to effectively fight for a socialist transformation of society is to join an organization that is working towards these goals. None of us can do it alone. It is antithetical to the very concept of socialism to walk a lone path. If we try, that's what our bosses want. We have power in our numbers, in our love for humanity, and in our militant opposition to the interests of the rich and the powerful. In the words of Yuri Kochiyama, one of our movement elders, build bridges, not walls. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. Honestly, there's no way to follow that up. So I just want to say thank everyone for coming out. Again, I'm Zach. I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I want to thank Answer Coalition for calling this Day of Action. You know, if y'all want to stick around and talk to the organizers, go ahead. You know, I'm wearing a PSL shirt. Some people are. We have other people in, you know, just other shirts that you know organize this event by speaking. But yeah, thank y'all so much. And stay in the streets, y'all.
Awesome.